guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Emma. I hope you enjoy this discussion review on A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. Obviously this is book 3 of A Court of Thorns and Roses. If you have not read the other two, then you don't want to be watching this video as there are major spoilers that will be throughout it. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. So I'm going to get into this review because it is a bit lengthy. There's a lot to discuss about in this book. A lot happened, and it's going to take a bit of a video to get my feelings across and my thoughts to you guys. So before this book was released, I told myself, take your time. Do not rush. Do not read this book in a week. Take your time and drag it out because this is pretty much it. This is the final book in the series, even though there are more books and novellas coming out. So it's not done, but in this character setting with Feyre, I assume is the last book. So it's like the last one. And so I told myself to slow down, don't read it, and I read it in a day and a half. So much for that slowing down, dragging it out thing. So in A Court of Wings and Ruin, we follow Feyre, of course, as she infiltrates the Spring Court to get information that she can on the war that is coming. The High Lord of the Spring Court, Tamlin, doesn't see anything amiss with Feyre and is just putting off her feelings and her detachment to what happened at the Night Court as she was harmed, and figures that she just needs time to heal and doesn't see that anything weird is going on with Feyre. But his emissary, Lucien, knows something is up and does not trust her. He gives a bunch of side-eye glances. He's a sassy Lucien in this book. He's just like, what's going on? Soon, Feyre and Lucien find themselves back in the Night Court, and this is where they're in the story of war, battle strategies, ancient creatures, revelations, and love begins, and the story really sets off. So when I finished ACOWAR, I was very content. I was happy, I was shaken, my soul had been crushed and put back together at the end, and I was happy. I was so happy. I was over the moon. I had Rhys back, I had Feyre back, I had all these favorite characters, and I thought nothing was wrong with this book. Everything is perfect. 5 stars. Then I woke up the next morning and the honeymoon phase was over, and I started really thinking and saw all these glaringly bad parts and points of this book. I've been waiting a year. I love these characters, but something was wrong with this book, and it made me really sad to say that I only give it 4 stars. And for those reasons, you'll have to wait and see as I get into it. So welcome to my chat of A Court of Wings and Ruin. Let's get into it. ACOWAR is my favorite book in the entire world, so I had high hopes for this one, and it failed. It fell so short from what I wanted. There are a few points I really loved about this, so I will get into those too. But first, let's start with the bad. So the first character I want to begin with is Mor. So what I really am upset about with Mor's character is how changed she is. She's so overshadowed in this book, and I get it because it's more about the war than anything else apparently, but her character is kind of brought down from what she was originally. She's no longer this kind of kick-ass, takes care of her friends, will do what she has to. She kind of was angry the whole time, and while I understand because of what Rhys and Azriel did, I was still kind of disappointed in how she turned out in this one. It was kind of a disappointment. I really miss Mor and Feyre's friendship in this. They hardly talked, and when they did, it was so full of tension, and it wasn't the same, and I really missed that about them because the friendship in book 2 was so good. I felt their connection, but in this one it fell really flat, and that's disappointing because they were really good friends, and I loved their friendship and how they communicated with each other. So in this book we learn that Mor is bisexual, and I didn't see that coming at all in the previous book, and so I was kind of thrown when she mentioned that, and it's fine, but I kind of feel like it should have been mentioned at least in book 2 or the beginning of this book. It just seemed very out there and just not right. I'll get more into that later, but it just seemed weird for it to be mentioned at the very end of the book. You think it would be mentioned beforehand or something. Maybe this means that Moore will have her own story eventually, and we'll get more into that and her life choices and all that stuff, so we can get to know her better. But it just seemed very odd to be put in at the very last book. Maybe that's just me, but... So one thing I really didn't like about this book is it was rushed. Everything was rushed. The long descriptions I've come to familiarize myself with Mass wasn't in it, except for the battle scenes. They were very nicely described. I mean, it went on for chapters with just the one battle. And so when I found all of her other parts, it wasn't as described. You know, it was very short, clipped, to the point, and I really missed the long, big descriptions of the different courts and what they look like and the people. I don't know why. I know a lot of people are thinking it's because Mass was pushed to get this book out by a certain date from the publishers, and I understand, so maybe that's why it's rushed, but it really takes away from the story because so many parts that should have been longer weren't, and it really messed up with the characterization and the plot. Everything else, battle-wise, was perfect. I thought everything was described great. The emotions, the fear, the bloodshed, it felt very real and right, and that part I have no problem with. But everything else, scene-wise, it just fell short for me. So, Feyre and Rhysand's relationship. I've been rooting for them since book 1. I wanted them together, and then it happened in book 2, and they turned out to be mates, and I was ecstatic. I was so happy. I could have cried. I think I did. And I couldn't wait for this one because now they're more connected, they're more familiar with each other, and I was so excited. And while in ACOWAR the relationship isn't dull or even bad, it felt incomplete, almost empty and hollow. The war in this book is forefront, so relationships, it felt like, were back. You know, they were pushed away. It didn't seem to matter as much. And it felt like that was a huge mistake because we have all these couples, or would-be couples, that needed to bond and form more, and that didn't really happen. There are a few witty and cute scenes between Rhys and Feyre that happened, and I loved those, but it wasn't as much as the second book. They didn't have these little getaway areas, and they didn't have, you know, this connection thing, kind of like the star scene in book 2. They didn't really have a lot of that. It was more war, and when they were together, it was mostly in their bedroom or talking politics, which was a huge no-go for me. I was just like, where's all my favorite scenes with my two favorite characters? I don't want to listen to politics right now, over and over and over again. I heard a lot of people say how this book borderlines on erotica, and I don't know what people read to think this, but when I read those scenes between them, I got nothing like that. They were pretty tame, actually. There was a few words that obviously would be 18 plus to be mentioned, but it fell flat. There was no description of any of those activities, and I was kind of disappointed because I was expecting that. It was more described and played out in book 2 than in book 3. Again, the relationship, the love, and everything was shoved back, and the war became more forefront, and I was really disappointed about that. So I was kind of disappointed that those scenes were glossed over. I know a lot of people don't really want to read those type of scenes, but for them, because it was done in book 2, I expected them to still be there and described well, and they weren't, and I don't know how to feel about that, because it's obviously a disappointment to me that these two characters didn't have that like they did in the second book, and I just don't know why. I don't know why she didn't include these scenes. I bet there's a lot of people that are happy about it. They're even saying that there's too much, but for me, after the second book, this is too little. It kind of backtracked. Rhysand, I felt like in this book, lost his witty and sarcasmness. You know, he didn't sound the same as he did in book 2. He didn't have that arrogant air and aura about him that I really loved from book 2 and book 1. And so he, as a character, felt flat. I'm saying that a lot about this book, but everything was flat. Everything was rushed, and it was very disappointing. And to see Rhys go from this amazing, crazy, awesome guy to flat and not very impressive, and he kind of lost his humor and his self-being. It was disappointing. And Feyre, likewise, she had so much character development in book 2, and she kind of fell down from that trophy case. She became kind of what she was in book 1. I felt like there's nothing special about her in this book, and that's upsetting because it should be even higher. She should be going like, like this throughout the whole entire series, and she just kind of backtracked. Lucien. I was not excited at first to have him with Feyre and kind of there in front of the story. I understand why he came with, obviously, because he's mated to Feyre's sister. But I didn't like him in book 1 and 2 at all. But as I read more from him, and I became more understanding towards what he's feeling and what he's going through. He's got a mate who doesn't love him, who loves a human guy, he's supposed to get married to him. And he feels crushed, obviously, and I feel connected with that. I think Lucien was actually the only character I connected with in the beginning before he left, which I understand why he left, but that gave him no character development whatsoever and no time to bond with Elaine. And I was super angry about that because nothing's going to happen if he's not there to help her through what's going on. And I felt like that was kind of a cop-out to just send him off. Obviously, this means maybe he'll get his own story, him and Elaine. But for now, in this book, that's super upsetting because we needed him to be around. We lost a vital character, and nothing came about him and Elaine being mates. So the good parts. There are a few ones that I really love, especially Azriel teaching Feyre how to fly. I thought it was funny when she flew into the tree and was like, that tree's never been there before. And he goes, according to the bark, it looks like it's been here for 500 years. And I don't know, there's just few parts that I really love that made me laugh, and it kind of brought back the old feelings of ACOWAR. And I really love those, and I really connected to it, and that's what helped me keep into this story and not being so angry enough to throw it across the room and probably break something, because it is a pretty heavy book. I really enjoyed the heart-to-heart that Feyre and Suriel had. Suriel. I thought that was pretty neat because, in the last books, he seemed kind of like a scary creature that I don't want to go with, that has no feelings whatsoever. And it kind of changed at that point. And it kind of showed a humanity that it does have. It was really awesome because it took away from the brutality of the war for a moment. The little scene where the Archeron sisters were laying together in the tent was really cute. They have never been close, and they kind of were torn apart due to the war and being Fae and everything like that, and it was a really sweet moment. Rhysand's death. And you're probably wondering, why the heck is Rhysand's death in the good part? I will tell you why. It invoked pure emotions. I sobbed. I was so sad. My heart was crushed. I was worried. I was freaking out. I was so upset for Feyre and for his friends, and it was such a hard, turmoil-filled time then because we didn't know who was going to make it. Because Sarah J. Maas likes to kill off our favorite characters, I was expecting maybe Cassian, maybe even Nesta or something like that, and I suspected that Rhys would die, but I was hoping so bad that he wouldn't, and it happened, and it crushed me. It crushed my soul. I wanted to scream, and that right there is why it's in the good, and that's also right there is why this book has 4 stars. Because it had the power to invoke such strong emotions, and that right there is a hitting point for any book. If it does not have a strength to pull at your heartstrings, to make you feel stuff for these characters, then what kind of book is it? That's my thought on it always. I felt connected at that moment. It crushed me, and it was powerful, and that's why I read books, to give me these feelings that make me connect to the characters, and I loved it so much. This scene was very powerful. It was sad, it was crazy, it was maddening, chaotic, and it's one of my favorite scenes, even though it's soul-crushing. I read and heard many people point out how horrible Sarah J. Maas is for painting different people and their orientations in a bad light. I don't really know what to say about that I haven't already. I don't really agree with people calling her names and saying that she's a bad person. I just don't. I don't judge anybody, and this is a book, a pure fictional book, and I don't put any resentment I have towards it on Maas, because she's a human being, and writing a book is very hard, and not everybody is going to love it. There are people out there who are going to absolutely hate it, and it's just how you come across with your feelings that is the huge deal. If you do hate something, that doesn't mean you need to bash someone, and if you do love it, praise it, love it, you know, that's great, but to keep the hate down, you can't hate on other people and their opinions and how their writing is. So on the matter of the LGBTQ representation of this book, I have a note here, and I'm going to read it because I wrote it. I almost felt like this topic was forced. I had not seen Moore do or say anything previously to point out the fact that she is bisexual, so I was very surprised about that. It threw me for a loop, and it felt as if it was thrown in, because that's what people want in books now. I'm all for that type of diversity. I really am. I love books like that. But it shouldn't be forced in. No character should just be tossed in at last thought or have their orientation shoved in at the last minute because people are demanding that. It should be well thought out and planned accordingly and go with the story. And all the times that this came across as either bisexual or ace or what have you in this book, it felt forced, and I don't agree with that. I'm all for diversity, like I said, but it needs to be a part of the book. And each scene I read about this, it felt wrong to me. I'm probably the only one that thinks this, but it could have been done better. I don't think, maybe this is me, this is my inner thoughts, maybe Moore wasn't actually bisexual this entire time, and she just threw it in there because that's what people wanted. And if that is true, then that's a really big disappointment. You shouldn't be changing your characters because of what other people want. They're your characters. You make them what you want. And if she has been bisexual this whole time, it's kind of odd because it didn't really come across that way in the past books. So if that is true, then it is kind of, I do wish it was more forefront and we had more time to learn about those. So, you know, it's just weird how we go 2 books without those kind of things happening, and suddenly it's everywhere in book 3. It felt forced and like she just had to throw it in because that's what people wanted, and again, I don't agree with that. Maybe I'm wrong about Moore's orientation or whatever, but that's just my thoughts. Don't throw rocks at me, please. It's not bad, it was just very unexpected, and so I'd like to hear what you guys think and have a take on that, because I know you guys do, and I would like to discuss it and, you know, listen to what others had to say. So I can't believe this series is over. I know there's more, but it's done. I love the ending, but it felt like it had a cliffhanger of sorts, so it ended but it didn't really end, and that's kind of weird. I wish it had a proper boom, it's done, it's never come back type thing. But, you know, there are more coming, so I guess it was left open for a reason, and I'm excited to see why. I did give this, again, 4 stars. I do have a actual written review, which it's down below, and you can check that out. So I hope you guys enjoyed my review. I hope it gives you something to think about. Let's discuss it. Message me on Twitter or on here or whatever, and talk, because I'd love to talk about this. I'm dying to talk to someone. So please thumbs up and subscribe. Push that little bell next to the subscribe button so you can get notified of my videos. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.